episode 2. Yes, of Getting Juicy with Rachel and Hero. And in this second episode, we actually have a guest, which is super exciting.
Can you believe it?
I know.
Guys, we're so famous already.
And well, it's funny because if you're watching this and not listening to this, you're already going to be like, who is that third person? So that's not so much of a surprise. Like, he's already there on the screen. So our guest is Jeff Grace. And Mr. Grace, has anyone call you Mr. Grace? Maybe they do.
Not very much, thank goodness. I mean,
he used to.
Okay, well, I'll take the honor in that.
And Mr. Grace, yes. Jeff and I think we met each other first before you, or maybe you knew Hero first. How did that?
Yeah, no, I think Hero and I met first. Yeah.
That's probably right.
Yeah.
So Jeff resides in North Vancouver, correct? Or are you in Vancouver now?
Yeah,
you're still in North Van. Yeah, North Vancouver,
North Shore
British Columbia. Jeff actually used to be a teacher at the yoga studio that I had owned, which is still going, and I believe Jeff is still teaching there.
Well, not since the actual, I guess, consistent location closed.
Okay, we can talk about that another time.
Okay.
Because I did not know that.
All right. Okay, we'll talk about it another time.
We'll talk about that another
time. No, I'm not teaching there at the moment.
Okay, perfect. So in any case, that's how Jeff and I know each other. It's all through the yoga realm or world, health and wellness. But what I would like to first ask Jeff is, who's Jeff? Who are you?
Who's Jeff? Wow.
Who's Jeff? That's a very
big question.
It's a huge question.
Big question.
If you could summarize yourself in just a couple sentences, if possible, for people that are listening, or what you do, or I know I just shot it with like the mother load.
Just dive right into the water.
Dive right in.
Shot your shot with the mother load.
I don't know. Who's Jeff Grace? Always got to love giving a bio and thinking about, where am I going to start with this? How do I do it? I am I'm a lot of things. I'm a yoga teacher. I'm a swim coach. I'm a mental health advocate. I'm a writer. I'm recently a husband.
Congratulations.
I tell bad jokes. Actually, I totally forgot. I've done stand up. So yes, I tell bad jokes in front of lots of people. I don't know. That's me.
But stand up, I think that it's what I love about you and why we wanted you on the show is because there's a lot of commonality, I think, between the three of us too when it comes to yoga and mental health and awareness and those things. And you've already kind of,
and I'm a Gentile
open the
Jew.
door to that.
Remember that.
And that's the other thing.
Right?
That's interesting. I know, exactly. So there's, L'chaim, exactly. We brought someone on whom I think, just to start it all off, has a lot of commonalities with us that maybe we can have an interesting conversation because we have some similar, whether it be genetic attributes, those kinds of things as well. But yeah, Jeff is also Jewish, which I completely forgot about. But yeah, so I mean, back to, maybe we'll start with even the mental health component, because you did mention that. And when you said comedy, which is interesting, what I find extremely, not just interesting, but this takes a lot of chutzpah. Is that the right way to say it?
That's the right way to say it. That was well done.
It took me a second to think about that word. I'm like, is that, I'm going to use that here. A lot of
Maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, that's true.
For like a minute or so. A lot of chutzpah to get on stage. But when you mention that, it's all for a very maybe slightly different reason why people would mostly think of comedians getting on stage. Can you explain about that a little bit more? Because
how I got into doing that a few times was there was someone at actually a fundraiser for the North Shore Bipolar, or I'm trying to think what it was at the time, but Bipolar Foundation. And they brought this guy, Dave Grenier, in, and he did stand-up comedy for the fundraiser and talked about how he ran this program called Stand Up for Mental Health. And so what it is basically, and Dave's done an incredible job of spreading this actually across the world. Like he's got these workshops in Australia. I believe he's got some in Europe. He's got lots all over North America. And so basically what it is he brings in a group of people who have legitimate mental health challenges. I always say you have to have a piece of paper to get in the group. And
like a doctor's note.
Exactly. No, this person
Literally?
really does have something going on.
This is my prescription.
And the group usually starts, I want to say, probably around like 15 people. It whittles itself down like any group like that. And basically you learn how to do stand-up comedy around your mental health challenges. So it's, it's kind of got the twofold aspect to it. One, it's a great way to do advocacy work, and really brings some of the mental health subject matter to the population in a little bit more of a, relatable, gentle way. And then on the other side, it gives just a lot of people an opportunity, one, to tell their story, which is, cathartic for many. And two, one of the girls that I was in our main class with, she's gone on to like really, she came in, and Juno wouldn't mind me kind of telling this story. She came in, and actually her first day, it was really funny. Dave was going around asking people stuff, and she's like, yeah, I came to this workshop like 2 or 3 years ago, and I think I remember part of my first class that I did, but I think I came to 3 of them. And she was like, it was at a really bad drug stage for me. And, she's like, but I'm back. I'm going to try to stay. And now she's like, she's a comedian. I mean, she is legitimately like the funniest person I've ever met. But like for her, some of this stuff that's hilarious, like in class, she would go off on a rant and we would be crying on just how funny it was. And this is no joke. And in real time, I go, Juno, you have to write that shit down. I'm sorry, I don't know. Can I say stuff like that?
Yeah.
Get all of that stuff out. It doesn't matter.
It's okay.
We welcome all forms of language.
Podcasts are amazing because you can swear, and we've already said some slightly dirty stuff. So we're yoga teachers, yet we say fuck, we say shit, we say piss, we say all that kind of stuff.
God,
I know.
You're a yoga teacher and you do that shit? My God.
And the first episode, I was a little bit of alcohol. Like, God. My God, bad influence.
Tell me I could drink on this podcast.
Well, it's 9 a.m., so
I don't care. It's
just coffee.
Drink as much as you want.
Just coffee.
Anyways, so I was like, Juno, you got to write that shit down. And she literally turns around to me and goes, what did I say?
Oh my, really?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like that's just where her evolution of her brain has gone. And she, though, like she is now, I want to say she's like president of the nonprofit side of Stand Up for Mental Health. She's doing, paid gigs with it. And I mean, she is, she's absolutely ridiculous. But so that's one real sense of the success on that side of it. The success on the advocacy side is huge. Like I said, about this spreading around the world. And then
quickly say,
go.
Because it's just because it's a topic, you actually like segued into it quite seamlessly or perfectly in my mind, talking about this this very strong woman who just got up there and was like, well, fuck this. This is me. And didn't seem to, I mean, that takes a lot of guts, man. I still can't imagine doing that. So it kind of segues into what Hero and I were talking about is, and I feel like she is this person, maybe we all kind of are somewhat high functioning anxiety sufferers, but high functioning. I don't know if that makes that kind of like it's a weird like, and the reason why I say that is because even my mother would tell you, she's like, yeah, like I'll have my horrible bouts of anxiety, depression, whatever it may be, and then a few days later I always seem to get back on the horse. She's like, yeah, but honey, like when have you ever stopped working, stopped doing all the things you want to do, stop being creative? So in a way there is that high functioning component. Yet it's still an everyday battle, right? So I don't know if there's different levels of that for different people, but I feel like it's even the story that you told about that woman, it's a very real thing, I think, for some of us, and that people might not know necessarily that you have anxiety or that I have anxiety. Or sorry, go ahead, Hero.
No, because it relates to what you're saying. I think it's important for us to distinguish right from the beginning of our conversations with our guests and ourselves as well, as that there are different spectrums of mental health. And as far as anxiety is concerned, anxiety can mean OCD and PTSD, which I live with every day. Even this weekend, I had a flare up. But as far as depression and other forms of psychosis and other forms of mental spectrums of development, behavioral, cognitive, or chemical, I think it's important to understand that and distinguish what those are, which we're aware of, but our listeners might also not be as aware of those things either. So I think it's just important to distinguish that, because with bipolar, which I do not live with or have, it is another mental condition and way of living that I think is important, which I think is great that we have someone in our show that can educate people about that, because they might correlate, but they are also individual within their own way of living as well, and how we view life, right? And how we interact with the world.
Yeah, agreed. And also I think just to really shine light on it and see that we're, even though we're all battling with our own personal demons and different demons, that we're still all getting out there and trying to flourishing and triumphing. Is that a word? Triumphing above?
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Jeff, but it was just, that story just kind of brought together some of the stuff that I wanted to talk about today. So
cool.
Yeah.
I mean, when we hit back on that, I've got my own viewpoints on that kind of the phrase of high functioning.
I want to hear them.
Yeah, I'm gonna finish my one thought about the Stand Up for Mental Health, because one of the things I found so cool about how Dave ran these things was, and I was also here on the North Shore, a group that saved my life is a bipolar support group that runs on the North Shore once a week. And so I was involved in that for years, and then go to the Stand Up for Mental Health group. And the first day, Dave's like, okay, we're here to support each other, but this is not a support group. He's like, the thing that's going to happen is you'll say something that you would say in a support group, or people would, show their empathy and be like, oh my goodness, and ask questions about it and whatnot. And he's like, yeah, for us, you might say the same thing. We go, hell, that'd make a good joke, man. And that's, what, that's, that's what that aspect was. One of the greatest aspects of that is it gave you the permission to just let go of any attachment you had, or to a label, to a diagnosis, to whatever, right? And just
love that.
Make fun of each other for it too.
Yeah. You weren't there for reassurance or for those kinds of things. It was a different kind of therapy, and I appreciate that, because I think that also anxiety sufferers or more specifically anxiety sufferers will go and try to grasp onto reassurance all the time. So it's nice to have a different kind of group that is geared towards a comedy, I guess, and just putting a different light on it, spinning it a little bit of a different way.
Yeah, it's been interesting too, since kind of being in that world a little bit. Like I wasn't, other than Eddie Murphy in my younger years, I wasn't that big on stand-up comedy, but over the last few years, it's been interesting too to see how many comedians have actually done shows on exactly that. I can't remember his name. This is one of my favorites. It's called The Great Depress.
Okay.
The Great Depress.
The Great Depress.
Yeah. Okay. The comedian is awesome. And he does it as like a little bit of a bio, a little bit of stand up. So it's a stand up. So how the special's actually done is they kind of go through his life in a bio, like his mom's in there, they interview him and whatnot, and it intersperses with this stand up.
Right.
So it's really cool. It's done really well. One that I don't know why, I think it might have been The Night, and I have to go back and revisit it.
I'm going to put that, I'll put that actually in the episode description, like a link to that if I can find it. The Great Depression, right?
I'll send it to you.
Yeah, sweet. But I'll just make sure that everyone knows that if they're interested in it, they can click on that. Yeah, sweet.
And the other one I was going to say that just didn't resonate me on the night I decided to watch it, but I think that it will at a different point. It's called Three Mics. Okay. And I once again forget who did it, but one mic was like stand up one-liner type things. The other mic was like stand up kind of storytelling type thing. And the other mic was his story of a battle with depression. So he went through and he went to the different mics as he's doing the performance and basically took on the different roles of a storyteller.
Wow.
Yeah, that's great.
That's really cool. I'd like to see that actually. That's really neat.
Yeah. No, it's really interesting. Some of the, like I said, creativity that's coming out and a lot of, there's always a jokes about this. Most stand-up comics have some of their own challenges. And
I was just listening to Joe Rogan with, I think it was Rob Lowe of all people was on his show. And they were talking about like, Rob Lowe was talking about like, and I think a lot of actors will say this about their kids. They're like, oh my God, I never want my kids to be in showbiz. Like it is just way too stressful. Like it's just, all those things. And they were talking about comedians and how they're like, can you think of a comedian that has not had his or her own, or it or she or whatever, their own demons, their own like that is normal? Like there's no comedian that is quote unquote normal. Like they all have something that they're struggling with. Unfortunately, sometimes it ends up being abuse of drugs, like those kinds of things. But that's very, I don't know if that's just, is that like a creative bone in the body? Like I don't know.
Yeah, I think you know what, I think there's two elements, because if you do enough reading, you can see that obviously there tends to be that correlation between people who have mental health challenges and creativity. I mean, it's just a high correlation of it. And then excuse me, the other fact is
why all Jews are in show business? Sorry.
We want to take back what was ours that was taken from us. I think that has a lot to do with it.
We have a lot of that trauma, and we
have an outlet for it.
I don't. Sorry. Yeah. We'll talk about the ishness afterwards, but yeah.
Oy vey.
Oy vey, indeed.
It's no, and I think that's the other side you kind of brought up, is that just people dealing with demons in different ways, right? Mm-hmm. And I mean, comedy is a good way to kind of get some of that out, I think,
Yes. Yeah.
So Yeah,
Well, one
like it
thing.
was, one of the things that was great about this too, before we kind of leave it, the stand up for mental health. I mean, there was, one of the guys that was in our group, like crippling anxiety,
Yeah.
and watching him get up on
Mhm.
stage, and you know what, like he actually be a great person for your podcast, because Michael's Jewish, and like all of his like mental health jokes were like all
Really gonna find
Jewish
this
mental
crazy
health jokes.
niche, hey, hero.
Oh,
Like we're just
Yeah.
we're just pegging
perfect
ourselves.
niche. I know.
We're trying
I
we're
know.
trying not to we're trying to not just get Jewish interviewees or guests. Like we really want to keep it
Yeah,
open. But
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah,
funny.
yeah.
It's interesting because I forgot that you were ish, and then our potential next guest, I also forgot she was, and so it's just anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite fascinating, right?
But
Yeah.
that's I love hearing these stories. I love it. I love
Yeah.
it. It's
Mhm.
just we can never stop hearing these things. And as I was talking to some friends last night, as we get into this age now where I don't think we're necessarily going to go back from being virtual, like it's going to be a long time before we, pull back from being so virtual because of the pandemic we're in and because of the state of the world. I think this is just the future is now with doing all these kinds of things. It's just going to get more and more technical and with electronics that we have to really, we're going to lose touch with the human interaction. And I think that's hard with people with anxiety and depression,
Mhm.
right? It's hard because we already have maybe a hard time getting ourselves out there into the public, right? And interacting with people. And imagine what this is doing now as we're, at least we're doing these kind of interactions,
Yeah.
but
I mean, it's kind of it on the opposite side. Fine for me, where my wife Yanni just looked at me at one point during the initial parts of like quarantines and
yeah,
and whatnot, and she's like, "This doesn't bug you that much at all, does it?" I'm like, "No, you know what? I like chilling in my house, reading and taking Huxley for hikes on my own. I'm all
yeah,
good."
yeah.
So it's not that I'm saying that that's always healthy. That's my tendency. Right? I'm not saying that
Yeah.
that's a healthy way to live. Don't get me that wrong. Don't get
I
me
can help
wrong on
you.
that.
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Because for me, right, if we touch on the anxiety end and
Mhm.
and me personally, it I would say I developed social anxiety. I mean, to be full out, just diagnosis wise, I'm bipolar 2, and I've got a little extra spice on the side with narcolepsy. And
Can you explain
yeah,
what bipolar 2 means?
yeah,
What's the
yeah.
difference?
So
Yeah.
you've got bipolar 1,
Okay.
which basically the manic phase of bipolar 1 tends to go to a much higher level. And then it is also tends to be a larger period of time between episodes.
Mm.
So there tends to be kind of, if you're going to have episodes, depending on how you're being treated, how you blah, blah, blah. But the tendency is a year to a year and a half between kind of the manic episodes, and the downs can be whatever the downs are.
Mhm.
Um, Actually, it's interesting. After I got diagnosed bipolar 2, my mom got diagnosed bipolar 1. So it
Hmm.
was interesting that they had her pegged as clinically depressed, and then all of a sudden when I get diagnosed, they're like, "Oh, maybe we should look into this bipolar thing for you." So she's on the spectrum in that way. Bipolar 2, the tendency, and now it's not that manic episodes can't escalate to where it's more on an out of control end. Myself, I'm lucky. I've only experienced hypomania, which I have to say is something I miss. But we can talk about that as well.
That's a different. Yeah.
Um, is that the ups and the downs come more frequently,
Okay.
Okay.
and your downs will go as far as downs go. Your ups tend to be, like I said, a little less than what a bipolar 1 individual would experience. and they just tend to be, I mean, I've had in the past probably, like 3 episodes in a year.
Oh, wow.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So,
And then they, how long do they last for? Those 3 episodes?
I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but I'll say a timeline, and one of my best friends will look at me and basically, laugh their ass off and be like, "Yeah, no, it's longer than that, man."
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the
The
thing. Like, I'm sorry, Hero. If you don't know if you're going to say something,
Well, I
please.
was going to say that our perception of reality is our perception of reality. So when we have a space or a time where we're feeling or behaving in a certain way that we think is a certain way, usually that's pretty distorted compared to the outer perspective. So as Jeff was saying, just because we think we're totally fine, or we know we're not okay, or somewhere between, the people on the other side of us are going to have a much different reality because they're not in the same brain state as we are, right? The chemical balances are going to be different. So that makes a lot of sense.
Agreed. Well, just for example, the other day, a friend of mine was telling me how they, and I don't want to name names on this show. It's not what we're here to do. So someone I know did tell me they were having a panic attack, and we were talking about, breath and those things, and it only lasted for a couple minutes. And then this particular person said to me, well, if it lasted for longer than that, then, maybe I would get concerned. I was like, how about a week? Like right. So for me, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, I would be lucky. It's funny. I would consider myself happy or lucky, or that it was a positive thing that it only lasted for a couple of minutes for myself. Cause there are times where it'll last. For me, it's a couple minutes is actually good. Yeah. It's not that bad.
Well, I mean, I think that's something to maybe touch on. I mean, I don't know where you guys want to go today. But I've got some little, I don't know if pet peeves is the right word, but one of them is, everyone, no matter where they are in a spectrum, is going to experience anxiety. Anxiety is healthy. Anxiety is normal.
Yes.
Right.
It is.
And I think that too much of that has been, demonized. And so therefore anyone who's experiencing any type of anxiety that's in their, perception, is higher than what they would consider normal. All of a sudden it's like, oh, I've got anxiety issues. I've got anxiety problems. I've got anxiety disorder. And it's like, when you look at what's, once again, I'm going to go back to that. This is some people take this joke fine, others don't.
Go for it.
I love a Simpsons episode where, Bart washes his red hat in Homer's white shirts, and he goes into the power plant and with a pink shirt. And of course, Mr. Burns calls him in and gets him diagnosed as insane. And they're taking Homer off to like the institution, and they've got him, grabbed him, and they're like, how do you know who's sane and who's insane? And the doctor goes, anyone with, and he stamps his hand, and it says insane. With that stamp is insane.
There's the label. Oh my God.
So for me, and this is where some people are okay with this joke, some people aren't.
That's a good example.
I've got the stamp. Right? Where it's like, no, it's an official.
You got the diagnosis. You got the,
So, and I think that too many people, once they feel that heightened anxiety, think they have some issue with anxiety. Whereas when it's really, something that, I don't want to say it's legit, but you know what I'm saying. On the disorder end, it affects life in a significant way that I'm searching for words. I'm sorry, but because
on a daily, on an everyday, everything you do basis, it's not just, it basically is
debilitating was the word I was going to say, right? Like when you're talking about heightened and talking about like, I would love it if it lasted like minutes.
Right?
Like, that's
Uh-huh.
great.
Yeah.
That is such great progress. But, you know, when it's that long lasting and really debilitating, that's what it is. It's debilitating. And it's
Yeah.
not just, I feel anxious and I got to kind of get through this. It's a debilitating illness.
Yeah. It's like, I can't work. I don't want to leave my house today. I can't. Yeah. And yeah, I have so many thoughts. This is such a huge topic. I feel like we're going to do multiple episodes on this because there's just way too much to say. And I was about to delve into, labels and, what's the difference between just coping with anxiety? Can you actually heal from anxiety? Is it genetic? I feel like there's so many amazing topics that we can delve into for listeners, which we will in the future. This is really just scratching the surface, like 100% scratching the surface. Because then we could get into, and Hero, please take. I feel like I'm doing a lot of the talking. I'm sorry. Hero, is there something you want to say? Because there's something I do want to get into in a sec, but just with labels and what we were just talking about, please.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think on that note about listening and not speaking as much, I think it's important also to allow for people to run with their creative train of thought and to know that it's natural for certain dialogues to be more or less. What I've been taking away from these shared dialogues is mental health is a spectrum that's broken into many spectrums, and in the relation to anxiety, in relation to mental health, as someone that does live with chronic anxiety, and definitely it's not generalized, it is chronic. I think it's important to understand that when we have any kind of condition, as Jeff was saying, if it's debilitating in your life, whether if it's intermittent, if it's daily, or so forth, it comes in waves. And that's kind of the metaphor that I like to think about mental health, is that it comes in waves, even if it's consistent and it's turbulent. It's not always going to be, the shoreline's never going to be always tied in or tied out. It's going to be very haphazard. But you could go with months where you would not think anything at all. And then all of a sudden, the earth comes in and you realize what you're going through and you get humbled pretty quickly, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we have a condition like anxiety or bipolar or depression or things in those veins, it's important to understand that when it's healthy and when is it stagnant, or when is there a deficiency or an over efficiency, And so I like to think of our nervous system. If our nervous system is in a fight and flight parasympathetic state constantly, which it is more often than not because of how most people do live their life, we're always in a state of anxiety. But it's a matter of how heightened and aware we are of that and how we react to it. And partially, we can't control that always. We can learn how to have tools and skills, which some are more adept at inquiry or to integrating consciously, which I have done through dialectic behavior therapy, which has been a godsend. We should talk about that one episode. Mm-hmm. But then also, there are some people that just go through it and they might know about it, but they're not as susceptible to reacting or to feeling vulnerable to seeing it being an issue. Mm-hmm. So I think that's also a very gray area too. You've got to really understand that it's perspective, perception, and some things are chemical and some things are onset and situational. So it's not
black and white.
No, yeah, it's very, very much transparent.
Yeah.
So that's really all I have to say on that note. But I think it's important to identify and to acknowledge that as well for those that are, floating around and that are wondering, where am I? And you're here. We're here together. So,
Well, it's interesting because for many years, I mean, when I was, and I haven't talked about this yet, but when I was 18, I thought I was coming down with the flu because I wasn't feeling that great. And then I started to get these bouts of like derealization or depersonalizations of feeling like I thought that I just smoked a joint, but I really hadn't, because my whole perception of reality, I felt wonky and dizzy. And, at that time, 2001-ish, 2001, it's not something that was really talked about in schools yet. My parents, no one was really versed in, symptoms of anxiety or those kinds of things. So in any case, long story short, I have spent many years doing so many different, things for myself, but many years thinking that this is just going to go away. Like I've spent pretty much my entire adult life thinking that I could do all these things and I would be cured. Like there's a cure out there somewhere, and even if I didn't say it out loud necessarily that way, all the tools and the things I've been doing for so many years, I think that subconsciously I was looking for that magic pill or that, I go through bouts of like being really good at, doing my daily meditation and then going to therapy. And then I would go through, where I'm just like, fuck this. I don't want to do any of this. Why do I need this? I don't want to have to need this. I want to be normal. So I wouldn't do any of that stuff for a long time. Only recently has someone actually told me, they said, you know what? Yeah, maybe you're not going to get rid of it completely and it's part of your DNA, but you can manage it. So the word for me, you can manage it, was huge for me. Like instead of saying there's not going to be necessarily, and that's not a depressing thing. It's like, you're not going to change yourself completely, be a different person. It's not going to be a magic pill, but you can manage it. And there are ways you can manage it. It's not anyway, that was a big, and that was actually not even that long ago for me to come to that realization.
Well, I want to speak to that briefly because I appreciate the term of management, because for me, from my perspective, I've never had the idea that, what I have is going to go away or that I can get rid of it, and the ability to, and I don't know if it's the same, but in some ways of how Jeff was talking about, the loop you back in here, Jeff, is how when it was coming to what we have, what we live with, what can we do with it? Right? What can we do with it to make it of use to not only ourselves, but to also not say, this is who I am, what I am, therefore that's all I am. But what can we do with that part of ourselves that can then contribute to the lives of other people? And while we're here in this vessel, while we're here on this weird thing in the sky, what can we do with people that, if we wish to, because that's not everybody's calling, and that's totally fair. I respect that immensely. What can we do to make use of it so we can help other people that might be going through it, that are before us or after us, or that are with us in our generation? It's all about what we want to make of it. So if Rachel is examining, I can manage this, you can also therefore celebrate it. And so for me, I'm always parading around like I've got anxiety. I'm crazy as fuck. But you know what? I love myself for that. And you know what? I'm not going to be seen the way that others are going to be seen. And chances are I'm going to be misunderstood a lot, which is actually exactly how my life has been. But look at all the things that I've been able to create and trailblaze and inspire in people, or even provoke in people, or piss a lot of people off. But then therefore here I am, so today having a conversation about it, and then continuing that legacy in making a difference in even some person's life that I have even no idea that they might be even listening to this right now in the future. So I think it's important to find the inspiration and to take something that we go through, or that something that has happened, and making it either making light of it or bringing light to it. And I think those two distinctions are very important to acknowledge and to determine what our role is that we want to play in that.
I think, there's a few things. First off, that you've got, two Jews and one half Jew on here, and we're not talking over each other. And I know that all three of us like to talk. So, good on us.
The whole time.
It's funny talking about, that the me being Jewish, with my mom being Roman Catholic, my dad being Jewish, and my booby at her funeral.
I want to talk about this. Yeah.
It was funny because I haven't spent a ton of time with my dad's side. And my booby's funeral, like, I have all these cousins from New York who, like, 3 of them are rabbis, and like, no idea. So we're all in this kosher deli afterwards, and I'm sitting there, and I am the only Gentile, so I am like a novelty number
New York?
one. No, this is in Toronto.
In Toronto. Okay.
Yeah, but we are like
Little New York.
And we are in the middle of Jewville. Like, we are on Bathurst, right in the heart. Like,
yes.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel
like
out of place because I don't have a yarmulke and don't have, like, anyways. but with it, where I was going to go with it was that I'm in this deli with my family, and I came out of there and I'm like, Seinfeld wasn't that smart. Like all he had to do is walk into a deli, and like I've got like 5 Seinfeld episodes right now, like just watching my relatives.
Hilarious. Oh
Right?
yeah.
Going back to the mental health thing on a couple of notes is one, right? It's funny. I got asked, I was talking at UBC to a group of pharmacy students, and their prof was like, this might be a stupid question. And I look and I'm like, I'm sure you guys have all heard him say this to you. There is no stupid questions. But he's like, if you could be born without this, would you? Right. And I mean, it's still a question that to be honest, I struggle with, because do I want to be challenged with this? No, God, no. Right. Right. But do we want to be faced with many of the challenges we do in life? No, but they make us who we are. And, as you were saying, in the same way, I kind of like myself. So it's
we like you too.
No, thanks, guys. And
oh God,
with it is
what
smile hero. Yeah.
It doesn't need to be cured. Is another aspect, right? Like looking for a cure. And it is. So now going back to my first support group was really interesting. I was in a place called Magnolia House here on the North Shore, which is, I call it a halfway loony bin. Because they don't, I know I'm not politically correct with this stuff. It's
humor. Yeah.
There's a psych ward, and then there's Magnolia House.
Okay.
And so when I went into Lionsgate, I guess twice within a week and a half, and the second time was just, I couldn't stop crying. And my anxiety was ramped. I mean, I was, I've tried to commit suicide twice. I've always said in my adult life, though, even though, I have sat there at times with like enough pills in my hands to end things, or, like my suicidal ideation at times is overwhelming. But anyways, what I was going to say with that is I've always said in my adult life that, my friends or my medical people don't have to be worried about me actually following through on these ideas while my mom's still alive, because I'm going to be completely honest when it comes to myself. Now I'm at a different point in my life than where I would say this in the past, but I was completely willing to kill one person. I wasn't willing to kill 2, right? Like I was completely willing to, take my life at different points, but I knew that it would kill my mom. Right. And I'm not willing to do that. So as long as my mom's still alive, nobody's got to worry about me on that end, no matter how depressed I get.
Now you have other people. I mean, you're married.
Well, I know. I said, this was the past. I used to say this more.
Past.
Right.
So what got you past that thought? Was about that, like you didn't care so much about you?
I mean, it's, to be honest, like it's kind of weird for a very long time. Actually one of the most comfortable places, with, like I said, is weird to hear and weird to say, was in that zone. Because I knew it so well, like where I was consistently thinking of new ways to off myself.
Well, we live in, I've been really, there's so many crazy, I shouldn't use that word because I hate that word actually, but there's so many zones. Yeah. Profound comfort zones that anxiety suffers, bipolar, whatever, mental health, that it doesn't sound like it should be comfortable. Right? When you say that, it doesn't sound like it should be comfortable, but it is a comfort zone of what a sufferer is familiar with. It's almost easier to go there than it is to be positive.
Yeah, and I mean, you have to. I mean, when you are still kicking, you have to learn how to manage that zone and manage how to be in
Yeah.
that zone, right? So even though it might not be a comfortable place, you've learned how to manage it enough that we're still living.
Right.
And so then it is a place that you've actively had to, I don't know, make better, if that's the right way of saying it, but you've had to deal with it. It's something you've had to deal with, right?
That's
We can
familiar.
push
It's
shit
familiar.
down,
Yeah.
right? And not deal with it. But if you're in a place where, your ideation is like obsessive in your mind
Hmm.
and you're still talking, well, you've had to deal with it, right? Because you ain't walking away without dealing with it. So I think that might
Yeah.
be one of the reasons why it feels almost like not a safe space, but just a space that is okay. For me, I don't want to leave this zone before just say, like, my first. So when I was in Magnolia House, my
Hmm.
first visit to this support group, which was run by a great doctor who unfortunately passed just a few months ago, named Dr. Termanson. And it was the only, possibly in the world, bipolar support group that was actually managed by a psychiatrist.
Wow.
And so I went in there and, I was in a very depressed state. And also, just to, before saying the story, I hate when people call me Jeffrey. And so
I don't
Dr.
think I ever
T,
have. Yeah.
no, you haven't. Dr. T came in and he's like, so has everybody met the new people? And there's probably like 16 people around the table. I think there's two, maybe three of us new. And people were like, no. He's like, okay, well, let's start with Jeffrey. I'm like, motherfucker.
Right.
And so I'm like, I'm Jeff. I'm diagnosed with bipolar 2 when I was 26. Blah, blah, blah. I'm in Magnolia House now because I'm depressed. Yeah. And this is my doctor. Yeah. You haven't told us anything. I'm like, what? So, okay, go a little deeper. Yeah. You still haven't told us anything. And I turn and look at him. I'm like, the fuck do you want me to say?
Right.
And I mean, it was great. And Dr. T did this to me so many times. And being a swim coach, I'm like, like to think I'm a pretty big expert on knowing how to press people's buttons to get stuff out of them. And, sometimes you got to piss someone off to get, out of them what needs to get out of them. And there's so many times I would go see Dr. T and being like, I don't want to talk about shit. And then I come out of there and I'm like, he just did what I do to athletes all the time and I couldn't stop him. And he would just he knew, however, he knew that he needed to piss me off to get me to really open up about a lot of things.
Right.
And so there at that time, I just went off about how, I take the meds that I've been given religiously. I'm seeing, a psychologist. I'm now seeing, a psychiatrist. I get my sleep. I try to manage my nutrition as best I can. I'm doing yoga. I'm journaling. And I'm still fucking here. Right?
So these are
Yeah,
the
you
things that
are.
you're doing now still.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's important. Yeah. Cause I just there's just something super important, I think, that we need to discuss is just after talking about, like a very heavy topic of suicide attempts for people that might be listening. What is it that got you to the place you are now? Cause that's extremely important to.
And the two insights I got from this first night, and I'm sorry, I tend to tell stories long.
That's okay.
Trust me,
We do too.
Okay, good. Because my wife likes to remind me
It
how
could be a
long my
3-hour
stories
podcast, but it's not going to be.
We can have you
are.
back. We can
Joe
have you back.
Rogan.
Yes.
And the Dr. T looked at me and he goes, you know what? Like, there's no guarantees, man. You could be the perfect patient, and I'm not guarantee you that you're going to be stable at all. He goes, actually, you know what? I am going to guarantee you something. You can be the perfect patient. I will guarantee you will have depressive states, and you most likely will have manic states. And so one of the things I said within my rant was about fighting. And so then after the meeting, I'm talking with this guy, and at the time, I guess I was like 30-ish. And I was the youngest by a good chunk in this group. And Brian, who's probably the closest to my age, he pulled me over after and he goes, hey man, so first off, I'm not going to tell you I know how you feel, because whenever anyone says that to me, I like make a fist and I want to punch him in the face. And he goes, I'd rather walk away from this conversation without a broken nose. And he goes, so I'm not going to say I understand or I know how you feel. He said, but I heard you say fight a lot. And he said, when things got better for me is when I stopped fighting. He said, you know, for us, this is a biological thing. So are you just going to try to fight against a chemical reaction that's happening in your body? Or are you going to kind of let it ride and be like a cold? Right? And kind of go, this is something that's happening in my biology. And, you know, that was a point where I started to realize I might be able to, and this then transfers into the yoga aspect of things, but be able to release some of that attachment and observe, right? So observe suicidal ideation, and coming back to what you're talking about with wanting to touch on that, but being able to see these suicidal ideations as things that are just passing by, right? And be able to watch them without being grabbed by them and taken away.
That is the huge takeaway. And I was actually talking to Hero about this recently. One of my favorite words right now is neutral. How can we be neutral to, you know, and especially with someone like me who deals with a lot of health anxiety. So, you know, something in my chest, oh my God, I've got lung cancer or something. I mean, maybe that's a Jewish thing too, but
I think it is a little bit. I think
it is a little bit too.
Has a correlation.
I mean, I definitely, right. And I definitely go to the far extreme of things, but you know, what I'm really trying to do is how to get into the mindset of like, okay, this is not a good feeling. It's not a bad feeling. It just is a feeling.
It's a fact.
It's just how can we be neutral? And just to get, cause I don't know how much time do you guys have? It's about 10 o'clock right now.
I've got 10 minutes.
10 minutes? Okay.
10 minutes.
Okay. Perfect. Cause, and then when you were talking about stop fighting. Now, in a way, I don't like the word fight when it comes to the fighting against yourself, you know, or fighting against this thing. Like, can we just not be and sit with it, be neutral with it? But it is the fight in us that allows us to go forward and to, you know, continue to work on ourselves, right? So there is a positive way. And what I think of myself as fighting is I have some maybe not so great DNA stuff or chemical stuff with anxiety and those things, but yet I also have some fight in me from my grandparents, from the Holocaust survivors, and I guess, okay, maybe the fight's not the right word, resilience.
Resilience is a great way of describing that. Tenacity.
Yeah, and I laugh because I was about to say that exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
The word, or
the word, like, because I think the vocabulary just changes in a different way, because the fight, when you say fight, that I don't know, that can just create a nasty cycle, I guess. And when you talk about resilience and you talk about management, that's also, you know, going hand in hand. But basically you're resilient to challenges, right? So you're taking them on and you have strength through them. But that doesn't mean you have to be, you know, punching it in the face all the time.
Totally. No, and that's when you're reactive in a way, but
yeah. Well, yeah, and when you're talking about resilience as well, though, I mean, I can't describe how many people have said to me, Hero, you are one of the most resilient people that I've met. And I can see it now, because if you think about the relation to the Holocaust, having, for me, a grandparent from either side of my parents that are Holocaust survivors that had to fight through the war and go through here. So you kind of look at the miracle of the fact that I'm alive, even regardless what was dealt to me prior to that or onset in my actual existence now, that there's a gift. And, I'm one of those either lucky or neutral people that can't inflict self-harm on themselves physically. So I didn't really have the DNA to say, I'm going to take my life because I'm suffering so much and I don't know when this is going to end. I'd rather end it myself. I never had the will to do that. So I kind of had to say, okay, so if I can't do that and I'm too afraid to do that, then great, I get to live, but how do I find the resilience and the meaning to actually live my life and to use the life I have while I have it, right? And I didn't explain this in the first episode, and we don't have time in this recording to go into it too much, but, one of the things that I've had to go through is the loss of my only sibling, and he passed away from leukemia when I was only 13. And, that's really something that for me, that keeps me living my life, is the loss of my only bloodline, which I'm now the only bloodline and the generation that's going to live on. And I don't plan to have a family. I don't plan to have kids. I actually really hate kids. I'm not afraid to say that. People that know me well know that. So if you're surprised, hi, welcome to Getting Juicy with Hero and Rachel and Hero and friends. But I mean, in all reality, yeah, you got all the transgenerational epigenetic traumatic health stuff that we go through, and then you also have the stuff that you deal with in your own life. So it's like, no matter which way I turn, left, right, center, the more skills that I have from, whether it's yoga, if it's clinical therapy and life-based skill development, which I've done through dialectic behavior therapy and 20 years of psychology and psychiatry since, whatever, thanks mom. You kind of have to make the best of it. And especially if you are listening and you are someone that can relate to that, where you know that you can't inflict self-harm to yourself, whether if it's through a device, if it's through medication, or whatever it is, just the idea of self-harm to debilitate your livelihood of living your life, you kind of have a little niche of where you're kind of not stuck, but you know that you're here. And you might as well find the meaning in what you have while you have it, because before you know it, it's going to go like that, and then you're not going to have it. And then no one's going to be able to see the appreciation and the beauty in the skill set and the story you have to share, so.
Well, and like we're all very lucky, really, because all three of us, I know, have people that love them. And like at least one person that really loves them, that really supports them, will really have their back. Not everyone has that necessarily, right? Like
No, that's true.
So, with that being said, I think that, I know that when we finish this recording, I'd like to have some sort of link for people who really feel like they don't have anybody, a number or something that someone can reach out to get the help they need, because, I do know, I know of people that have either thought they didn't have anyone or really don't have anyone in their lives. Right.
Yeah.
So we've definitely struggled, but we've had people, right. I think.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I think is important in what you're saying and wanting to provide. I mean, people, like finding stuff is hard, right? Like, I mean, I wanted to be, okay. So a couple of stories on this. One, first time I actually second time I attempted suicide, was when I was 15. And, so my mom had actually tried to commit suicide, a couple months before that. And, so then anyways, I took a whole bunch of pills down. Getting your stomach pumped sucks, so don't do stuff that'll get your stomach pumped. But then, where did the best place that they could put me, because they felt it was dangerous for me to go back with my mom right away, which is understandable enough. But yeah, I got put in a juvenile delinquent center in Regina. for a week to
Oh,
10
wow.
days.
That is not wow.
Yeah, that's not
So the
really
system, so
ideal.
that, no, so like,
But
so the system essentially was like, this is the
this
next,
is what we got for this kid.
wow,
Like,
man.
we don't
Wow.
got
Wow.
anywhere else that
Yeah.
we can give him to you that we feel
Wow.
he's going to be safe. And
Right.
you know,
Wow.
that experience is full of stories, because I
Yes.
was myself, and I was 15 at the time. I think the other guy was either 12 or 13. We're the only two Caucasians in there. So that was also an interesting experience. It was
Oh,
great. You know what? It was,
we need way more time.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
No,
and to be perfectly,
we're gonna have
yeah,
you back. I
Yeah,
would say we're gonna have you back.
we
You
need
can't
to
say
have,
no. We
yeah.
can't say no at this point. We're just gonna
I know
reel
now
it
it's
in,
the
as
reeling
Rachel
we did the first
says.
episode.
Yeah.
Reel back in, reel
Yeah.
it. I don't know if this is the right direction,
We're just
but
gonna sip that juice box all the way out and just scrunch it up into smithereens.
I
So,
don't know. I know.
but as you were
um,
saying, please
yeah.
continue.
So
Please continue this story.
so with it, just on that note, I want to say it was one of it was actually a tremendous experience in my life. I mean, I was lucky that I could talk my way out of things well enough, and
Yeah.
ingratiate myself to people well enough. But it was, yeah, the cultural aspects. Anyways, that's a whole nother story. But with it is, that was a spot that they had for me. So then come back to adult life,
Mm-hmm.
and when I moved back to Langley, when I moved to Langley, sorry, I lived in Calgary for a while, moved back to Lower Mainland, moved to Langley. I was like, okay, I'm going to get proactive about this stuff. Like, I really want to deal with it. So I found a support group in Langley, and it was me at 27, 28, and three 55-year-old women. So I did that support group, didn't work that well for me. And then finding a psychiatrist, found one in a quickish time frame, but he's also, which is another story. Basically, after I asked my GP, I was like, psychiatrist is great. He's giving me the stuff a psychiatrist needs, but I would like to speak to someone with a little more empathy. And he was like, here's, a therapist that I send some people to. She's great. So I went and saw her. She asked me if she could request records from my psychiatrist. I said yes. There's a whole bunch of circumstances where my psychiatrist had to cancel appointments in this time, or else I would have asked him about the therapist. But I went back to my psychiatrist, and he's like, oh, so I saw you were starting to see a therapist. I said, yeah. And I started to explain stuff. And he was like, yeah, since you didn't do that with my consultation, I'm not sure that this should continue. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh.
Yeah. So then we got to the North Shore, had a breakdown, and I got taken into this, CPS, Community Psychiatric Services, which is actually just a tremendous support network.
Okay.
But one, I've just given you a number of experiences where that definitely wasn't there. And number two, the only way that I found out about this was by having a breakdown and being, given the place to stay in Magnolia House. So it's the only way that I found that. So basically what I'm saying and what you're talking about doing is just giving the information on where
Resources.
to go.
Exactly.
Right? Because
it's not easy to find.
It's not
Do you
readable.
feel right?
No.
Yeah.
And I know we have to, unfortunately, we have to wrap this up, but yeah, I know. I wish we had more time. Well, we will have you back on, but just with the resources thing, do you have some that you can give me that you feel, because I know you're more active in the community, that okay, good, that you feel like are reliable, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
And,
so we'll find those.
Some, and some web resources and whatnot.
Great. Because not everyone might be listening to this who are living in Vancouver, British Columbia, those kinds of things. So just to wrap this up with you, dear Jeff, not Jeffrey.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Just before we wrap this up, and we will have you back for sure, because we still didn't really talk about the Jewishness, and I'd like to talk about that a little bit more and delve into some more things. What would you like to leave our listeners with, or is there anything that you want to talk to them about what you're doing right now? Because we do like to have I want you to plug some stuff that you're doing we can help you out with. No, and cross, I was going to say cross-contaminate. Hello.
That's not great, but
obviously,
that's okay.
There's a pandemic happening right now.
Yeah, I mean,
collaboration is what I meant to say.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to see more, I guess, of what I'm doing, I mean, my main thing that I'm doing in the way of yoga work and of things is I teach sport-specific yoga and really focused on swimming-specific yoga, which is yoga designed for swimmers and multi-sport athletes. The company is called Swimming Specific Yoga. Website swimmingspecificyoga.com. Also have a YouTube channel, which I think I looked last night. I think it's got about 130 videos on there that are specifically designed
they're great.
for the population.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, they're really well put together. I've seen some of the more recent ones where you really break down certain poses for every body. So I love it. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's something that, I mean, there's too much that we can talk about. But
I know.
At another point, because, you say that and all of the stories I have about mics breaking or doing a whole day of filming.
Oh God. And that'll be a very,
we'll get into
that'll be a
recording
different
change of the industry.
Totally different ball of wax.
So anyways, people just got kind of where you can find out more about me. I would also say, go to, if you want to see if I'm funny or not, you can put comments in where Rachel is saying, no, Jeff, you're not funny at all. Here's feedback for your jokes. If you go stand up for mental health, Jeff Grace, you can find me YouTube wise. And then I would say Juno's a girl that I was talking about. If you put in YouTube stand up for mental health, Juno Mac. Yeah, that one you're going to laugh at. Me, I'm not going to promise. That one you're going to laugh at.
Yeah, maybe everyone will just think, oh, but Jeff is just so cute and dreamy, and so I'll just have crushes on Jeff Grace.
Well, and I've got a story for that part too.
Yeah, that's another exactly. We didn't even start with that.
I know. I was like, when are we going to get to that? We'll do that in part 2. We'll leave the listeners.
Sounds good.
Exactly.
Sounds good.
That time I got verklempt when I met Jeff.
Your eyes are twinkling.
The Flake House.
They're always twinkling.
I know they are. I'm staring deeply into your eyes right now. So my Manischewitz, my Men-Oshevitz.
Oh,
look at you.
If anyone,
I'm not even drunk yet, and I feel drunk from
Jewish
that.
wine, by the way, that we would get to drink during Passover, and when you were kids, it was very sweet, sort of like a spiked grape juice. It was quite delicious. For those of you that don't know what Manischewitz is, but anyhow, thank you so much, Jeff, for taking the time to chat with us, and it was just great to have you on as our first guest, somebody that we both do know, and we can't wait to have you back. So thank you.
Yes.
And
thank you.
Congrats to you guys doing this, man. It's not an easy thing to step out like this, right? So congrats for you guys on taking the step and going for it. It's great.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Jeff.
Progresses. Yep.
We can't wait to have you back on very soon, and everyone listening, stay tuned because it's going to get very juicy. Mm-hmm.
It will get juicier. I shouldn't say apologize, but it was a bit of a somber episode, but I feel like it needed to be done. So I know our first episode was quite goofy, but you're going to get little. Yeah.
You're going to get the full spectrum.